your own education, your ability to be a good role model and leader for your peers is so hugely important. And everyone is here, I know I'm preaching to the choir, everyone here knows what's at stake for our country. Right now, we have some huge educational challenges that we can't shy from. I'm thrilled that so many of you are part of the solution. We have a dropout rate that's 25% right now. 25%. That's more than a million young people each year leaving our schools for our streets. And we know they have no chance in the legal economy to make a good living. We know that in tough economic times, we have as many as 2 million high-wage, high-skilled jobs that go unfilled because we're not producing the employees with the skills they need to be successful. And then finally, a generation ago, we led the world in college graduation rates. We were number 1. And today we're 16th. 15 countries have passed us by. And then we wonder why we're struggling economically. So we have a lot of hard work ahead of us. This is brutally tough economic times. Those of you that have been teaching for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, this may be the toughest economic time you've ever been in. We're doing everything we can to try and help, but this isn't easy. And despite all those real challenges, what we're seeing across the country are amazingly inspiring stories of young people who don't come from a whole lot of money, who are often the first in their families who go to college, not just graduating from high school, but graduating college and career ready, and then taking that next step on their academic journey. And we know, study after study shows, the young people coming from disadvantaged communities, if they can graduate from high school, and if they can graduate from college, they basically won't be poor anymore. And not just their lives change, but their children's lives, for generations to come. But if we as educators fail to educate, and fail to provide those supports, and the guidance and the opportunities long term, then we become part of the problem. Across the country, think about the impact GearUp has had. Almost 12 million young people whose lives have been touched. It's staggering. It's staggering to think what a part of the legacy all of you are, but we have to continue to build upon that. And the challenge is how do we again lead the world in college graduation rates? President Obama has said that by 2020, a few short years, we have to be there. And our competition for young people here, to be really clear, your competition for jobs isn't in your neighborhood or in your district or in your city or in your state. You're competing for jobs with young people in India, in China, in South Korea, in Singapore. And our job is to make sure you are absolutely ready to be competitive in that global marketplace. And our young people today are as smart, as talented, as creative, as entrepreneurial, as children as anywhere in the world. But we have to give them a chance to be successful. And so this collective commitment to looking past the status quo, to looking past the stereotypes, to looking past the doubters who say that poor children can't learn, or black children or brown children can't be successful, your collective commitment to beating those odds and beating them every single day is extraordinary. So I want to please give yourselves a huge round of applause for the difference you are making every single day. This work is very personal for me, and you heard a little bit about my background. But growing up on the south side of Chicago, before I was born in 1961, my mother started an inner-city tutoring program. And she raised my sister and brother as a part of her program. So I was going to an after-school program long before I ever went to regular school. But what I saw my entire life growing up were young people who came from a very violent community, who came from a desperately poor community. I don't know if she had one student who had an intact family. I know we didn't have any parents who had gone to college, but young person after young person, because she was in their lives, because her staff was in their lives, went on to be wildly successful. Some went on to help me manage the Chicago public schools. One is a brain surgeon. One went on to be a Hollywood movie star. Her philosophy was that 15-year-olds taught 10-year-olds and 10-year-olds taught 5-year-olds. The teenager who taught my group growing up was a young man named Kerry Hollow. And he was like so many young men today. Never met his dad, ever. Barely knew his mother, was raised by his grandmother, by all those typical stereotypes or whatever, and he's a young man that would be caught up in the gangs and do whatever. He not only taught us, went out to college, went out to law school. Today he is an IBM fellow, and he's one of the top 50 black research scientists in the world. And from one little neighborhood, from one little community, corner 46 in Greenwood, this extraordinary amount of talent flourished. And while that always inspired me so much and drove me every single day, what I always thought about is I thought about all the young people who didn't have those kinds of opportunities, who didn't have the GearUp in their lives, who didn't have adults who believed in them and think about the tremendous talent that we as a society lost. Think of that collective loss of human potential. And what you guys are doing ensuring that the Kerry Hollies and the Michael Clark Duncans and the Corky Lyons and the Ron Rabbits, the guys that I grew up with, those young people exist in every one of our communities. And it's our collective job to give them the chance to fulfill their tremendous potential. So I thank you for what you're doing there. Please hold us accountable for trying to be a good partner. We're trying to do everything we can to help you. As passionate as I am, and Martha, and Deb, and Greg, the honest truth is obviously none of us are helping children every single day. You guys are doing that, and our job, if we're doing our job well, is to support you. So we're trying to change how we do business. We tried to get grants out much earlier this year in March rather than September, so you guys could plan and staff up and be ready to roll once we go back to school in the fall. We're trying to do some creative things around college scholarships and building savings accounts, and we're going to watch that very, very closely. But we know when young people start to take ownership for their own education, when families start to become more financially literate, when even just saving a little bit of money each month through high school, we know those college going rates go up pretty significantly. And so we're going to watch this very closely. And our job is not just to fund GearUp, our job is to fund education across the board. And I think so often all of us are playing catch-up, and we have to get out of the catch-up business. So I just want to take a moment before I close to talk about big picture what we're trying to accomplish, then I'm happy to take any of your questions. For us, it always starts with great early childhood education. If we can have our 4- and 5-year-olds enter kindergarten ready to read, ready to succeed, we can close those achievement gaps. We can make sure that every single young person has a chance to be successful. So in the past 2 years, we've put over $600 million into high-quality early childhood education in disadvantaged communities where folks are willing to create opportunity for families and neighborhoods where that didn't exist before. And we want to continue to invest for the long haul. We think that's the best investment we can make. We're going to continue to try and drive K-12 reform. The fact that 46 states have raised standards, college and career-ready, internationally benchmarked standards, that's going to be hard to teach those higher standards, but this is a big, big deal, ladies and gentlemen. And to move from adoption to implementation is going to be difficult and hard and sometimes painful. But just think about this for one moment. I think for the first time in our nation's history, a child in Mississippi, which is a lower performing state, or a child in Massachusetts, which is a higher performing state, are going to be measured by the same yardstick. No more dumbing down standards, no more lying to children and families to make politicians look good. It's going to take a lot of work to teach those higher standards. But if we're honest with ourselves, we know far too many of our high school graduates, not the 25% dropouts I talked about, but far too many of our high school graduates need remedial classes once they go to college. And we got to get out of that remediation business. We've tried to take on those dropout factories and put a huge amount of money behind school improvement grants to turn around those chronically underachieving schools. We have 1,300 schools that are in the process of being turned around. Some are showing tremendous success, some is going to be a little harder, a little slower. But just give you one stat, compared to just a couple years ago, we have 700,000 less young people in dropout factories today than just 2 or 3 years ago. So a huge step in the right direction. And I want to thank all of you for the hard work in making that happen. Talk about a 25% dropout rate. 50% of our dropouts come from just 2,000 high schools. And those 2,000 high schools represent 75% of our dropouts from the African American and Latino community, our young children of color. We have to do some things better. We have to raise expectations, and we're going to continue to push very, very hard there. And finally, all of this is to what end? Our goal is, yes, absolutely to graduate from high school, but that we all know isn't enough. Not too many good jobs out there if you just have a high school diploma. So some form of higher education has to be the goal for every single one of our young people here. 4-year universities, 2-year community colleges, trade, technical, and vocational training. We're trying to do a huge amount to increase access. One of the things I'm most proud of is an additional $40 billion for Pell Grants. $40 billion for all our nation's young people. We did that without going back to taxpayers for a nickel. We simply stopped subsidizing banks, put all that money into young people. We thought that was common sense. That was wildly controversial here in Washington, but thanks to Congressman Fatah's and others' leadership, we were able to get that done. And just in the past 2 years alone, we've gone from 6 million Pell recipients to about 9.4 million, a 50% increase, so a huge step in the right direction. We fought very hard to keep staffing interest rates down. We won that fight. The President signed that bill 2 weeks ago so that staffing interest rates didn't double, which would have made a tough problem even worse. So that was a huge step in the right direction. Quite honestly there, all we did was not make a big problem worse. And we all have to collectively continue to invest in higher education. And I worry far too many young people are starting to think college isn't for them. It's for rich people. It's not for people who look like them or come from their communities. And so we have to continue to challenge that status quo. Last year, 40 states, 80% of the country, Republican governors, Democratic governors, didn't matter, 40 states cut funding to higher education. And we know when that happens, tuition boosts and young people start to struggle. So I met with the National Governors Association 2 weeks ago and challenged all the governors. You have to invest. You have to invest. We're pushing very, very hard to support community colleges. We're seeing some extraordinary things going on there. We think community colleges have been this unrecognized gem along the education continuum. And whether it's green energy jobs or IT jobs or healthcare jobs, that community college option is a great one going forward. Last thing I'll say and then open it up is I just want folks to understand what's at stake, not just for the GearUp community, but for education. The President, myself, our team, I think all of you, we think of education as an investment. We're never saying just invest in the status quo. We have to invest in reform. We have to challenge the status quo. You guys are doing that. You guys are looking on a common set of metrics. You're partnering with ACT. You're challenging yourselves. That's a great investment for us to make. Other folks look at education as an expense. And right now, there are a set of folks in Congress that want to see Pell Grants get cut back, who want to see Head Start slots go away by the hundreds of thousands, who think somehow we can cut education. I think if we do that, we cut off our nose to spite our face. We have to educate our way to a better economy. We have to make sure every single young person has a chance to be successful. In a country that is quickly becoming majority, minority, this isn't just about doing the right thing for the Black community, the Hispanic community. This is the right thing for our country. We have to own this together. So as this debate plays out in the weeks and months ahead, I'm actually testifying on Wednesday before Congress around sequestration, which would lead to devastating cuts in education. We're going to do everything we can to fight that. Some in Congress think that's okay. Think it's okay to cut 8, 9, 10% of domestic spending. That's not how we're going to get there. So please continue to do the hard work that you're doing every single day. Please continue to believe in the great potential of all these young people here. Please continue to set an example for the country of what's possible with guidance and support and opportunity and long-term help. And please have your voices heard as we as a country decide, are we going to lead the world in college graduation rates or not? And I promise you, if we get there by 2020 and hit the President's goal, we will only do that on the backs and on the shoulders of all of your collective hard work. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. I don't know if we have others.